ready.
Mhm.
4 o'clock. So as I ask at every meeting, do we elect a chair for every meeting? Is the meeting chair?
I don't think so.
You're the man.
You're the man.
It just seems that's what our practice has been.
Yeah.
To do that, so. But we're not doing that. Okay. So then, is there a written agenda or anything that?
Oh, Bill, did you not have it?
Yeah. We'll share. Or do you not have it? Yeah.
No, I'm good. I got it on my phone already pulled up too. So.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Notice. Disclaimer.
Very well.
Okay, are you guys okay with the agenda?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if there's, I occasionally miss something or what, you resent another thing to me, did get this afternoon. So I don't know why I didn't have an agenda, although I did get the other pieces and I printed all those out. And this was just my own agenda if we didn't have one. Okay, good. So we're called to order, 4:02, and for my own clarification and documentation purposes, the members of this committee are were appointed, the budget committee are now members, so that's, okay, Steve and Scott, and then Rhonda and I, or the others, so that's good, and that's clear, and I'm here. With that. So at our last meeting, we had, I guess first thing we should do is, has anyone looked at the minutes?
Yep.
Any comments on the minutes?
Close enough for horseshoe.
Close enough for hill shoes. The only thing I had with the minutes, and it doesn't need, I don't think it requires a change, is me referring to the complexity. My comment to complexity was about the county itself, not the complexity of our process or elected officials, which I believe you stated, it's like, no, there's only 8 people, this is not complex, so that wasn't what I was talking about. Right. And just relative to trying to compare to other counties, the level of complexity, like in Jefferson County and Deschutes County, and where we land in that as well. So. Anyway. Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Steve?
Second.
Scott? Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. So now we got the minutes done. Conversation about the, thank you for the information, Will, all those pieces. Recommendations for compensation schedule and where we land on these.
So, Will, did you have something to bring to the meeting, or did you provide I don't know that I received any
He sent out quite a bit by email.
digital information from you today or from?
I said, yeah, so, yesterday evening, I sent a memo out with a number of exhibits. Did you get a copy of that? Okay. I have a hard copy, I'm happy to.
Yeah, I have a copy too.
5:43 p.m.
From you?
Get the email this afternoon.
No. From you?
Mhm.
No. I have 3 emails from Jamie Berger today
For the budget committee.
related to the budget committee.
Scott.tibbs@gmail.com.
Scott.s.
Well, if your name were Blaine, you probably would.
Sent by Scott.tibbs.
Oh,
That could be on.
yeah.
Scott Tibbs got a copy. Might not agree.
Okay, can I reviewed all these documents, lots of good information and lots of information. And once again, it kind of gets down to what is the compensation philosophy of this group, and we had this conversation last year. Part of where we landed with them were the comp study that hadn't been approved yet, but I believe that is the study that ended up being approved, correct? With its flaws or whatever, but was what it was. And we landed, and I confirmed that we're still generally there with Crook County elected officials and being at a higher rate level than Jefferson County and not as high as Deschutes County. And there was a relative idea of complexity, scope, size, those kinds of things. So for example, Jefferson County population appears to be very close to Crook County population. At least with these, I mean, within like 1,000 people or so. But the complexity of the county doesn't, it's one of these things I guess we're supposed to consider, but it's hard to say, how do you define complexity? Just being intuitive with that and knowing about having some experience in those counties. So for me, a couple of the guardrails were somewhere between Jefferson and somewhere between Deschutes. Now, having said that, Deschutes is a fully 7 times the size of Crook County. And so you can't really just, put this on a scale and do it mathematically either. So then for me, it was relative to staff positions in the county, and there was concern around compression with the elected leaders of each of these departments. That one of the things that the county staff has that elected officials don't is competition for positions. So if you paid, 40% of a neighboring county that you can drive to, you're in competition with that employment. So you have to pay up a bit more than maybe if you were a remote county. And it's like, if you live here, you're pretty much gonna work here. So just to kind of start the discussion, I had just a couple of notes and then we can go from there. If you, assume that we're somewhere in between our competitors, Jefferson and Deschutes County, and that we're 1/7 of Deschutes and more complex in Jefferson County, then to start out, it's like, okay, confirming that we are pretty close, we're within the ranges from the comp study, or there,
From last year.
from last year. Now,
Yeah.
so I'm just saying, how about we start as salaries as they are, adjust for COLA, and then address this stipend thing, and I think some of the conversation was, let's just call it what it is, and if there needs to be that difference for stipend, then you make it a part of salary. And then also, if there is reimbursement, should be the same as every other staff member in the county, in my mind. You're gonna get reimbursed, you have a darn receipt.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
People, if staff can do it, elected, they don't lose that ability when they get elected. So, as far as any rate,
In the private sector, we obviously don't get away with that, can
No,
So can I ask a clarifying question? I think you covered, I just want to make sure that I'm understanding correctly. The information that we got earlier in the week with the JV management consultants report that came out. It showed that we adjusted our elected officials' salaries last year to the recommendation or above the recommendation that was provided last year. So we did a level up last year, correct? Is that,
there were adjustments made, one being, the big one being, how the judges stuff worked, through the end of the
Correct.
judge and then adjusting that. Yeah.
well, I see like the district attorney got an 18% increase in pay, sheriff got a 10.5% increase in pay. So there were some leveling occurred.
Right.
I'm just making sure that we're not still feeling like we're behind market in our salaries, and that everyone was leveled up to the appropriate level last year.
From that was a whole year ago, I can't even remember your face.
No.
No, at least in the minutes, so.
I'll know that.
Yeah, so that's my understanding. That was our intention last year, because contrary to other comments that are made, we did look at the data.
Yep.
Even though we knew that it wasn't official, and we tried to get, follow that as best we could.
So no elected official, shouldn't say no elected official, to our knowledge, the elected officials are being fair in their current wages as of 2024.
The other thing that we looked at last year too was the same thing that we're looking at again this year, which is the risk of compression issue as it affected, for instance, the deputy sheriff. Not too far cry from what you're making.
I'm sorry?
The other thing that we looked at was the compression issue where, for instance, in your case, the deputy sheriff isn't making that much less than you.
Well, not the deputies, the undersheriff,
The under sheriff, I'm sorry.
but that's, we have a space now.
We have a state, which we adjusted, which is why I bring it up, because we last year adjusted for that. That was one of our considerations as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was.
I'm good.
Okay.
I just wanting some clarity there.
Okay, the other thing that occurred to me as I was reading through all this and considering staff, kind of a time and grade system that's out there that doesn't really exist for elected officials. I mean, it's a different animal, but I think there was a comment made at our last meeting. It's like there maybe is a difference between a brand new elected official and someone that has experience over time. And so would it make sense to have a rough kind of step thing, like, when you're newly elected, first stage is somewhere between entry and midpoint, and then if you're reelected, then you're at midpoint.
I don't think that you see that in any other form of government in Oregon, or I don't know about nationally, but for instance, in the state house, those reps and senate, there's nothing like that. You can be in your 43rd term and you're still making the same thing as a
It's the
new.
first term.
Yeah,
It's a flat rate.
it's a flat rate, and you know that when you're running for election and or re-election. It's a county commissioner post, for instance, and you're running for election, this is what you get paid. For instance, they're woefully underpaid, that's an opinion, but if you look at the state house, those guys are making like 60 grand to be a senator. I mean,
Yeah.
So to me, there's two factors there. One is the non-commissioner thing where we do have to deal with competition from other communities for the jobs and for compression. The other, though, in the case of the commissioners, is that it's elected office. You know what you're gonna get paid when you're running for it. There is no differentiation, whether you're a Portland City Commissioner in your 4th term or a state house guy in your 40th term, the same as a newbie. So although I agree with you that the learning curve would lend us to assume that a 4th term commissioner would be more effective than a first, it's not standard practice to really differentiate in the paid salaries of that.
And all good points, and they may be most effective at getting reelected, not necessarily doing the job.
Well, that's the flip side. That's subjective opinion. So we're not charged with building on the subjective opinion.
But it argues it doesn't make sense to do steps necessarily.
I wouldn't think so. I mean, and the other thing I was thinking about is really, if you look at the task list and description of the job description of a commissioner in Jefferson County versus I wish we did the name of Bedford, whatever that county is.
Jackson.
Jackson versus Deschutes versus here. They're all very differentiated. What a commissioner does in Crook County. I mean, you saw that list that they provided for the last meeting, and each of the three commissioners do a lot of different things individually, but that's a lot longer list of tasks and obligations and commitments than some of the other counties in Oregon too, and I'm not saying that, and that's subjective too, so I'm not, just wanna bring that up in terms of us considering that Jefferson County be a corollary, for instance, to Cook County, they are differentiated in what they do there and the amount of time and job effort that they make for them.
I think even the comp study said comparables are nearly impossible because of that.
One reason is that, yeah, so.
It offers little insight since unlike the appointed positions, elected officials are not likely to relocate or, you know, so there's other competitive issues don't exist. Let's see. This was there. Could you speak or to more to the idea of compression with this and why that necessarily is a thing, again, in.
Well,
this
in the case of the sheriff, I mean, it's a state of Oregon statute. You know, he has to make more than the undersheriff.
Oh,
period.
really?
In the case of the other elected officials, it's not a state of Oregon statute, but, I mean, you kind of want. It's not a mandate like that, but typically I would assume that we.
Yeah.
I would assume that there's some differentiation between, you know, what's a deputy district attorney, if there were such, would make versus. The district attorney. And the risk and the problem with that in some cases is that they are subject to that. What you referenced is duration of time increases in pay. So they're gonna be inexorably ratcheted up. And if we're gonna assume that we're gonna pay them more, we're gonna have to deal with that. In the case of the undersheriff, we have to, in the case of the others, you know, it is fair for us to assume that we as heads of, even if elected heads, we're gonna have to deal with ratcheting up in a fashion that keeps them ahead of their next in line.
And, well, I'm sorry, I'm not intimately familiar with the survey that was sent out, that was 85-page survey that has all the different job codes in it. Do we have some departments that do have risk of having a subordinate make more than the elected official?
I did provide, and I know you didn't have a chance to look at it, Scott, I did provide some compensation to what I believe were the next highest paid staff members in each of the departments. I think the sheriff's office is one of the closer ones, and maybe the district attorney's office with the deputy or chief deputy DA.
DA.
Okay, see one for just a second. The chief deputy DA makes $138,000 under the current salary schedule. Under sheriff makes 130 plus the potential of, I think, an additional $400 per month for the city.
To the sort.
But and I think we have most of the elected officials here or online, so I don't know if they want to speak to any concerns about compression within their departments. Sheriff's kind of touched on it, but.
I would have thought that would have come out in their comments. That was an opportunity to submit, but.
Okay, thank you, Will.
And just to clarify my comments, the compensation I referred to in the memo that went out yesterday was just assuming the person in those positions was at a step 5 in our salary schedule. I wasn't.
Is that
necessarily putting
midpoint?
in the current. What's that?
Is that midpoint?
Yeah,
5?
well, it's a little bit below. Close.
But over the next 12 months, there's no risk of having any overlap if the existing personnel stays in those roles and moves to their next tier, goes from 5 to 6. They're still not going to be paid more than the elected officials.
I didn't observe that
Okay.
in my review. Cheryl, you're here.
I know my department we're, yeah, because there's so much more that I do than that chief deputy position, so I don't have that issue in my department,
Okay.
but I don't know about the others.
I think the undersheriff all in was at around 140. What's in that memo you sent?
That was the rough math I did in my head as I tried to factor in certification.
Is that how you added cert?
Does that sound right, Sheriff?
I'm sorry, I can't hear.
Oh, we were just thinking that the undersheriff with the certifications would be at around $140,000.
Yes, and, yeah, he gets not only the certification, but gets longevity pay on top of that as well. So when you put all that together, he is right at 140 currently.
Right.
Plus,
And
on top of
assuming
that, he has the ability to cash out 80 hours of PTO per year if he chooses to do so. 80, right? Yeah, so he could cash out 80 more hours if he chose to do that. But that's PTO time that he has on the books. But with his,
that's accumulated PTO time over this duration of time there, or is that an annual thing?
well, he gets PTO time if he's out on special events or he's putting in more hours, because.
So he can accumulate extra PTO on special events.
It's-
Okay,
Well, PTO is vacation.
right,
Based on hours worked.
Yeah,
right.
we don't have vacation or holidays. We have
Right.
PTO, which covers all that.
Bucket of time.
No, I understand. I just,
I said, I was
understand if
wrong
you can-
about what I just said. It's his vacation time.
Yeah,
okay. He can't accumulate significant extra PTO
comp time.
by,
It's based on how many years of.
right,
Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
it's a fixed schedule. There's nothing you can do
Yeah.
to get ahead of the fixed schedule this calendar year. Right, okay.
So. So let's see, I was proposing that basically we are where we are with the elected officials. Then we make an adjustments for COLA, and then if there are. Reasons for what was the stipend,
Mhm.
then we add that to salary, I guess, or we say that it's not appropriate. I did look up the definition of stipend. It isn't just for reimbursement like most of this, like I was thinking it was only for reimbursements. It's actually could be in lieu of salary or other, it's just compensation. And it is taxable, right?
Right.
Yes.
It is taxable and
Yeah.
but it's also, I think, and I don't have a Webster in front of me, but I mean, as it related to that particular stipend, it was specific to events that they do above and beyond, requiring travel or, reimbursement. It has to be related to specific events while in the course of their duties performed. And so it's not necessarily just salary or lumped into salary. You would have to.
It felt to me like there were a couple of positions that was the kind of workaround, and it really didn't have anything to do with. Being reimbursed for those things, and then, and the actual statement was. To reduce complexity or something, the administrative overburden for the poor commissioners that couldn't keep receipts.
And not to put you on the spot.
I don't think there was any names tagged to that. But I think
Well,
it's,
just in the
yeah, in
recap,
this,
per by
I think
position.
the stipend is part of their package. And so I would move that it just gets rolled over into their salary for simplicity, you know? I mean, it's a package deal that, when they were elected officials, that's what they signed up for. That's what we signed up for.
Well, you talked about this briefly last meeting where, and again, I'm a little fuzzy, but we talked about how there used to be two different forms of compensation. One was reimbursed with a different mechanism, and when something changed, we rolled out the stipend, and so then they had the two different sources. What was it? What was it?
I don't necessarily remember seeing
I'm not saying it right, but there was
Yeah,
some,
so I wasn't a part of the conversation, but a couple of years ago, I think it started with the sheriff in addressing the survey and the compression issue. They started talking about a stipend for the sheriff. I don't know if it was the same year
It was,
or.
yeah, it was the longevity and the, whatever you just said. Certification for all of us except the commissioners. That's what was for them. And the commissioners was separately, and it was intended for a different type of use with
Yes.
the commissioners.
Yeah, so I think the commissioner stipend was intended specifically, unlike the other stipends, was intended to address the administrative burden of all of the receipts, having to do the claim sheets, having to process all of that. So, you know, whether they're driving to Salem and they're paying for their fuel or they're taking somebody out to dinner, that's kind of my understanding of what their stipend was intended for.
Is it accurate to say that the commissioner's function causes a lot more of that than a typical staff function?
potentially, yeah, they're driving to Salem, they're seeing people. But I was a little confused. I thought that there were two different methodologies where they got the stipend and they can still use the county card.
Correct.
And my understanding was what my take from our conversation the other week was that was in a certain sense duplicative. And the general consensus was that we were going to eliminate one or the other or roll them together. And maybe, at least that's what I felt the drift of our conversation was. We didn't arrive obviously because we haven't yet at a final point, but a part of this, I think, is that we want to clean that up.
Yeah,
And that was the conversation.
Okay.
And I did do a little digging on that. I think by and large, my understanding is the stipend does cover the fuel expenses and the meals. Some of the larger expenses like airfare, hotels, those are still paid for by the county, not out of the stipend.
Card reimbursement, credit card, county card.
Yeah.
So,
they're blending a little. And John alluded to the same fact that he's paying for his meals or most of his meals when he travels.
but he doesn't
Out of
have to, he
pocket.
chooses to.
That's correct. That's correct.
But I still go back to the fact that it was a package deal, that we were offering the elected officials their salary, their stipend, and their card. And by taking that stipend away and not rolling it into their salary, we're decreasing their annual income, which I don't think is what they signed up for.
Is it part of the package when they?
Well, yeah, it is. They're getting their stipend, they're getting their company card or their.
But
their
what's
card.
advertised when they apply
But
for
don't
the?
think it's
Well, I think-
advertised when they're
I think
elected.
that's-
It's that position and.
That
I mean, they're
position,
not gonna job
that
description
position
when
comes
they-
with, whether it's the tax assessor or the sheriff, it comes with their salary, their expense account, and their stipend. And if we take one of those away right now, we're literally decreasing their annual income, which I don't think is fair.
But I don't disagree.
Yeah, so I'm suggesting that we just roll that stipend, so for simplicity and everything, into their salary.
How long has the stipend been in place?
2 years,
Mine's been there
for, I think,
2
2
years.
years,
This
it's
is the
relatively
third
new.
meeting.
Is that the same for the commissioners?
Yeah, that all came about in 22. Was the first
I-
meeting, I read the.
My only concern here is that by just blanket rolling it into the commissioner's salary, that they're not differentiating.
Steve, we're not talking just commissioners, we're talking tax assessor, we're talking sheriff. They all get the stipend, not just the commissioners, all of them, yeah,
For different reasons,
right.
that if we're rolling, are we talking rolling the stipend into everybody's salary or just the commissioner?
Well, I think if you, I think,
Which one? are
why
we
wouldn't you
talking
do it for all the positions? If they're all getting stipends, why wouldn't you just roll it into the salary?
My
for
only
all of
concern
them?
is that mentally that then becomes salary and not expenses that I'm committing to in the course and pursuit of carrying my job in a travel fashion.
Oh, then you really would be setting it up so that the stipend, now that's rolled into salary, is there and reimbursement is available.
That's my only concern, is that they're gonna, all of the things that they spent the stipend on would then roll into the county credit card, and you'd end up having a higher rate of net of total cost to the
Expense.
county.
Yeah, the expenses would go up. Cause they would expense everything,
That's my point.
but. Maybe they wouldn't, it might not change anything, but it may, that
Well, we
risk
know that the
does
sheriff
exist.
wouldn't, because we know he's very diligent and responsible.
Anything, I keep it simple, like, if I don't wanna have to charge it, I pay for it, so.
So I agree that if you remove the stipend, it reduces the pay of the elected officials.
Sure.
But I'll also state, I think it was a bad program to implement 2 years ago.
To add it to the compensation.
I think it was implemented incorrectly, but now we have to fix it. And to fix it, we probably need to put it in their salary. And whether it might not be dollars for dollars, but maybe look at moving them from step 7 to step 8. Where it's not maybe a full burden, but close. County clerk, she's at the top. Moves from 106, 142 to 108, 804. So $2,600
We're not talking a whole lot of money.
annually. And right now, the stipend amount for,
Like $250 a month, I think.
Yeah.
it's $3,000.
No, I agree, it's the
So-
biggest hit is the
Yeah.
commission.
But I would say to the commissioners, most of them, I do their credit
Expensive.
card. They use their credit card for a lot of this stuff. And
You
they're
don't
very
think they
good about,
Actually use
they're very-
$8,500 in stipend expenses.
they're very good about receipts and all
I don't
that
think it's
stuff.
8,500, I think it's.
I think it's 6,000.
Yeah. But
Well, I agree, even if you take a one-time hit, you know, getting this thing cleaned up is. Cleaned up.
And not fair, the question was raised to me about. The kind of, and it is the natural difficulty with the budget, because before we have the budget, we don't really know, I mean, do we have
do we have money?
money to pay anybody anything, you know?
I didn't pick mine up today, so.
But relative to the rest of the county departments, are the departments going to take any cuts or decreases in pay or that type of thing?
No, there's no proposed, pay cuts, there's still a proposed COLA, in the budget.
I think for what's being contributed, so there are a lot of positions that by natural attrition will be run off of their individual payroll expenses.
That's accurate, and the sheriff can confirm that. So the budget overall is a reduction from last year's budget. A lot of, we've asked the departments to really take a hard look at materials and services. If there are vacant FTEs, we've taken a hard look at that and eliminated some FTE positions that, were vacant that, we kind of help us move forward and try to stay sustainable. So no proposed furlough days, no.
It's kind of hard to do. Okay. And
Scott, let me look at this, you said. Okay, no, you're right, I thought you said 102, and I was thinking, that's an old sheet, because I'm at 106. Okay,
Yep,
never mind.
I got you.
okay, does anyone have a proposal about how to address the cleaning up of the stipend issue?
I would like to look at moving the elected officials from step 7 to step 8. And see if that would suffice for eliminating the stipend.
Well, and as I said, it's simple, there's only a limited number of them. We can very quickly look at the effort of each of those individuals moving from step 7 to 8, you know,
Yep,
versus what the stipend is for each position. So we do this?
yeah,
We have a straightforward list of the 8 positions.
6.
Is-
So I have this schedule. I think this is appropriate. As well, there's another one that has a little different number.
You have
that I-
steps there, and here's what the actuals are.
Yeah, I've got the actuals here. For each person.
Commissioners are not on that sheet you're looking at, right, the spreadsheet with the steps,
I have the commissioners on.
are they on that?
Yeah,
I didn't know. On there.
This. Maybe this is lining up.
Okay.
This is the step.
Yes.
6, right?
7, yeah, except for the commissioner. Commissioner aligns closer to step 6.
So there's 2 on here for commissioner, so there was an adjustment made starting in January of this year, where all the commissioners were paid the same at 114. So that is at 6.
114,067, step 6 is actually 114,961.
Christina, are you able to hear this conversation?
Yes, but I don't know what documents you're looking at. Christina, can you hear it? Yeah, can you not hear me?
She's unmuted, she
Yeah, I watched her go from unmute to, from mute to unmute.
Christina?
Can you talk again?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We got you.
There we go.
Yes,
Okay,
Somebody shut your.
point at me.
Were you able to hear when we were discussing about the discrepancy between the commissioner's compensation on the salary schedule without the steps, and then what is reflected with the steps? Does that make
I
sense?
need to pull up what you guys are talking about to understand what you're looking at. Part of it was, I believe, the last year, there was a step that was chosen for some of the electeds and then a percentile that was chosen for others. Is that what you're asking for? Why it doesn't exactly match, or why it looks between, like it's between things? And then the county judge had a certain salary. And then after January 1st, all of the commissioners were given the same salary.
I think what we're talking about is, it seems like all the other elected officials are on step 7. And the county commissioners don't necessarily align with that. They're
Yep.
actually a couple pennies under step 6.
Yep. That
And
is because, oh, sorry, go ahead. The
No, you
lag
go
is
ahead.
terrible. That was because the commissioners were approved on a percentile and the other electeds were approved on steps, if I remember correctly last year.
Right, because we're trying to make apples out of oranges in terms of what the commissioners are. They're not really on that step schedule. So I would propose that we compare first how step 7 to 8 affects the non-commissioner elected officials. See if that takes care of their stipend, then look at the commissioners separately and see how we can adjust for their reimbursement.
Yeah.
Or addition of that.
that's fair. Interesting enough, the commissioner rate right now at 114. At step 8, it's 120,764.
It's
Might work out, we might get everybody in step.
We may be able to get there.
How about that?
Wow, that's pretty cool.
So this doesn't include the 3 point, oh, this does include 3.3% COLA. Or will 3.3% be added to this going forward?
This includes 3% COLA for last year.
Oh, for last year, so
Not
we'll,
if we call it
Then
the,
on top of that,
on top of that, you can.
So if there's a COLA this year, the step 8 wouldn't reflect that COLA.
and is that the 2024-5 budget cycle, step 8? It's not the, not plus, okay, not for this current year, okay. Got it.
So for the county clerk specifically, moving from step 7 to step 8 would reflect a $2,662 pay increase in salary
It's pretty close.
compared to a $3,000 stipend. So it's short $338.
Till she gets her COLA.
And then COLA will make up that difference. Yeah, because you're gonna get 3% on your stipend
Right.
that you weren't going to receive.
Just a point of clarification, the 3% COLA is what is budgeted. However, the commissioners and what we typically do, and Will may change this, but we do a CPI adjustment. So we just budget that 3% because that's our estimate of CPI. So it could be vary from that depending upon what the CPI is.
And at what hard date is that CPI calculated?
That will be the June CPI number for July 1st, which is technically May.
be interesting to see.
So the assessor. So let me make a note here. So the clerk is 2662. The assessor, 2932.
You're going steps 7 to 8, differentiation, okay.
Yeah. The sheriff. I really don't wanna make upset.
But wasn't yours an exception with negotiation for the association for stipend?
Sheriff is. He's gonna come up, that comes up short for sheriff, $3,827.
Maybe you only spent $50.
So it's really a bonus.
But his stipend is $7,800.
A lot of that's training, isn't it?
What's that?
That stipend of yours, don't you use a lot of that for training, and stuff like that?
And
Well, the reason for the stipend was because right now the undersheriff is on step increases, so every year he gets a step increase.
Right.
And so he gets a step increase plus his CPI, plus his certification play
Right,
and all that, so that's why we had that. And why they put that in or recommended before was to keep that from compressing up against me.
and we, by state mandate, like I mentioned before, you are the only one where we are legally obliged to stay ahead of the undersheriff.
But didn't specify how far though, so.
Well, if it's not $1, then we're, if it's not ahead, ahead is ahead, we know that much, so.
so if we were to take the sheriff to step 9. That's a $7,758 difference. And his stipend is $7,800.
Amazingly close.
Okay. Good information.
What are the other benefits of being at step 9?
Well, he gets his cost of living increase on his stipend amount as well going forward, which causes additional growth in income.
Not profound, I mean.
It's not,
No, but I was just wondering
That's
what
like 5%, the stipend difference, the increased difference is 5% of his salary, it's not.
With the stipend and the salary, each year that we do a CPI, that's gonna continue to go up.
Sure.
The stipend, the way it is now.
It's static.
Every year,
Yeah.
and whatever my salary increase is.
Again,
You're not paying the CPI on top of the
yeah,
salary.
but again, the stipend adjustment is 5% of your salary.
So that leaves us with the commissioners and the district attorney. So let's talk about the district attorney for just a moment, because we're only paying 0.25 or 0.25 of the salary, but we're still paying a $3,000 stipend. So I'm not sure. Will, maybe you can help me understand. Does the district attorney make the same rate being paid from the city as the county's paying the district attorney? So is her salary 153,192 her net whole?
Does that come from the state?
Yeah, the state.
Oh, the state pays the 75%? Oh, okay. So if we move that position to a step 8, the state would pick up the other 75%?
They pay what they pay.
They pay what they pay,
And we don't know what that is.
We
I
do
don't
know
know the
the
number off the
deal,
top of my head, I think it's based on the size of the county.
yeah, it's based upon demographics.
I'm not sure how to bridge that gap on the district attorney of
Well, I don't-
$3,000 is total.
Because of the differentiation, 75%, you can't do it by a simple step adjustment.
No,
That's the one that you're just gonna have to.
it's 12% of what we're paying that person.
You
The
just-
stipend is.
you just gonna, if you are gonna be uniform with everybody else and retain the total reimbursement. There's no clean step to take.
To just increase the salary by the stipend amount?
If,
They don't.
yeah, you can't, you're gonna not have an analog to a step increase.
Yeah,
Because
it
it's not
can't align.
available because it's 75%. I know it's not as clean. You want
Yeah.
it clean.
Want a consistent.
So are there steps there as if we were paying it?
Well, the district attorney role aligns perfectly with step 7.
Currently, but that's including the random 75% of the money. It's only when fortuitous that it aligns with that. It's not because of anything we've done as the county, because we're only paying 25%.
But if we presume that we were paying that and that we were going to pay it at a step 8, and then we took a percentage of that, does that make sense?
You wouldn't be able to get there.
So what's the differential? What's the stipend of the DA right now?
3,000. Yeah, so we'd have, let me rethink that answer to your question. So
Well, maybe
if you go to
that's what-
step 8, 157,019 times 0.25, 39,254. So moving up one step adds $1,000 to the salary. So
It's an actual increase, but it gets it aligned with the others.
Yeah, but there's still $2,000 underneath.
yeah,
the stipend.
I'm $2,000 short still. So if I go up to step 10, 164,964 times 0.25. Now we're at 41,241. So there's the $3,000. But that's coming from a step 10. That would align with the step 10.
It would align with the step, the percentage cause, the risk there, and the sheriff alluded to this, is that the percentage increase that we're paying is gonna be much heavier on the COLA influence on us specifically, and only on that position than on the other positions, much more magnified than
Mhm.
the other ones, where it's like 5%. In his case, it's a huge percentage in this case,
Mhm.
but still, I mean, it's in terms of absolute dollars. It's not a lot of dollars.
Is it important to align the steps as it relates to this fractional salary? Well,
And
No, I think you have flexibility in terms of what you know, based on those factors that are in the statute, I think. And again, apologies for getting your email address wrong, but I did get a description that I sent to the committee this afternoon from the district attorney, kind of addressing, I think, some of those,
Yeah,
some of those.
yeah, I don't know that it was an interesting, dialogue that she
yeah,
had.
I read it too.
That listing lots of things that the person does, but it's not really an argument for the stipend in my mind. At all, and that the person works 24/7, is always on call, with the sheriff or whatever. Which kind of reminded me of being a CEO or a business owner or a whole lot of people that work 24/7.
Yeah.
That's the job, and
And you
you're
signed
an
up for
elected
it.
official.
Well, that is my argument, though. She signed up for it, but she also signed up for it knowing what her package was. And now we're taking that package away.
We
So,
haven't taken anything away.
no,
yet.
I know, but you're trying.
No, I don't know anybody's even
No,
suggested.
but
I think
but
we're
that's
trying to
my
make it work.
argument. That's my argument.
I agree with Scott. I think
Yeah.
we're trying to make it work. And what I would like to understand from Will is, does this alignment with the step suggestions that Scott's proposing make it any easier in the future years to deal with this? Or is it really just gonna be a one-off each year that we're trying to do whatever? I
Yeah.
mean, does this give us a framework going forward to make this a more intuitive process in the future?
It might, but I think it's always gonna be a little bit of a challenge, given the way that the district attorneys are paid in the state of Oregon with that fractional percentage. cut.
That one's gonna be the wild card. Congratulations, you fixed most, but not all.
Well, it could be something that can be addressed every year. I mean,
Yeah, I can, but but to your note on step 10, Scott. If you take them to step 10 this year, that addresses the stipend.
It does.
Right now.
Yep.
Here and now.
And,
Right.
and it makes the math work.
Yeah.
When you do your calculations, if you're looking at your grades, then the 10% comes to step 10. Which it can be a little easier to justify.
And they're
or
also gonna
explain.
get their COLA, and is the district attorney gonna get that same COLA that all the other county workers are gonna get, or out of that 75% from the state, do they use the same formulary, or? Do we even know that?
Christina, how has the COLA been applied to the district attorney in the past?
I don't know that the COLA was applied to the district attorney in the past because it had to go through the compensation committee in the past as well. So it was what they decided to pay that stipend, not necessarily a COLA.
So we're getting that person whole to this year.
Well,
She
Like
did get the COLA last year though, for fiscal year 25, the current year.
And that's, I guess what my question really was is, yeah, she gets the COLA for the 25% we pay her. Does she get the COLA for the 75% that the state pays her, or do they have a differentiated calculation in your, just, do you remember if they get on their 75% coming from the state, any COLA increase, or is it just different?
They have a different calculation that goes into what they pay them. Let me pull, I have the document up for the prior biennium. I don't know if it describes that, but I'll read through it really quickly and get back to you on that.
Locally, do you remember they get an increase each year from their 75% typically?
I do agree. We need to have a pretty, a stabilized format for how this goes.
I think Scott's idea is great, for, at least we have something to tie ourselves to, tether to. That's what looks proper now, that's why I was asking, is this gonna kind of give us an easier tool going forward or not, maybe the answer
Well,
is yes or no, we
Should,
think, yeah, that's what I was hopeful.
we don't have to talk about the stipend anymore.
Right?
We have got rid of that, that's the big, yeah.
So, well, Christina's looking at the
I think
district
what we do
attorney
is we
piece.
tell everybody that they're losing their stipend before we tell them, that aren't in this, before we tell them that they're getting.
You're so mean, so mean.
Tear it up in front of them. This is no longer.
Mm.
So the last one we'll have to converse about is the commissioners. And the commissioners are making 114,067. If we take them to step 7, which they're currently just under step 6, that's a $3,765 step. And they have a $6,000 stipend. Taking them to step 8, that difference is then $6,697. So it's more than their current stipend amount.
By 100.
But by
$67 a
by
month.
$700 a year annually.
Yes, I move that we do that.
Which one?
Step 8.
Go to 8.
Mhm.
I mean, if you're tethering these to a step, that's the simplest step. Obviously, this is 7, we're losing a pay cut. Yeah, the bigger frame of reference here is we already in the budget. We're not giving anybody any pay cuts. We're gonna have to recognize that there's going to be. We're gonna have to pull the money from somewhere.
This isn't an additional expense. This is expense we've
Not
already paid.
much,
We're already
just a little
paying.
bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Largely already there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's gonna be a wash.
yeah.
Does this stipend actually show up as payroll? It does.
It already does, so
Yeah.
payroll, it's just differentiated.
So we've agreed to step 8 for the commissioners, correct?
Well, we're talking about, we haven't agreed to any of it yet, it's all proposed, but I agree with you. I agree with you that it is the step that tethers as closely to.
Yeah.
Anything as all the others have arrived at a step that tethers to their combined stipend and payroll.
Yeah.
Current.
So to summarize. County clerk. Step 8. Provides a $2,662 stipend. Not stipend, additional salary. The assessor, step 8. $2,932 of additional salary annually. Commissioners, step 8. Provides $6,697 additional annual salary. Sheriff, step 9. Provides a $7,758 additional annual salary. District attorney, step 10. I did not write down.
Which was 39,000 something.
It came to 41,000. It was right at the
It
$3,000.
was 41,241 is what you said.
Okay, so that's just shy of $3,000, which is the entire stipend amount.
For the
Minus.
district attorney, sorry. They do not receive a cost of living adjustment at the state level.
Let's deal with that next year.
Sorry.
So they don't utilize COLA, but their salaries are adjusted in some manner.
They are adjusted and it's based on a function of the budget at the state level. So from what I see and what I've read in the budget document that I have for the state that describes the DA salaries, that is something kind of on an individual basis on their biennium that they determine based on that budget. So it does not seem to be a clear methodology that we could reliably say this is what they use every year.
Isn't it also true, Christina, though, that if you look historically at the annualized general trend of district attorney salary, that we have seen that 75% portion go up each year a little bit?
Yes,
Over multiple years, so.
Yeah, so it's there.
there's some type of increase.
So I'd like to make the first movement. I'd like to move to eliminate stipends for elected officials.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, there you go, you're getting your wish. Is there a second?
Into the meeting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All in favor?
I,
Aye.
Okay,
Okay. So the next step that I'd like to propose is that how would we like to do this? Would we like to do it by elected official?
just do them all as one.
Oh,
Well,
It'll probably
They're
be more
different
clear in the
steps.
minutes if you do each one.
Okay, sorry.
so I'd like to move. Do we need to vote on each one of these or,
mhm.
okay, I'd like to move that we change the county clerk from a step 7 to a step 8.
I second it.
Can we
discussion,
clarify that that is on the current salary schedule for fiscal year 24 to 25?
That is on the schedule provided to the committee for salary schedule 2024-2025.
Thank you.
And does not take into account the COLA.
And our intent is to provide the same COLA to that salary schedule that the rest of the county is provided, or the
Correct.
unrepresented at the county.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And all of these motions will be on that same basis. So are we good?
Okay, we have a second.
all
Right.
in favor?
I,
I'd
Okay, thank you.
like to move next that we take the the assessor from step 7 to step 8.
I second it.
First, second, any other comments? All in favor?
I,
Right?
Thanks.
Next, I'd like to move that we take the county commissioners, all 3, from their current salary, which does not align with a step on the schedule, to step 8 on the schedule.
I second it.
First, second, discussion, all in favor?
I,
Right? I would like to move next the district attorney from their current rate, which aligns with step 7 as the 0.25 fractional salary, to a step 10 on the schedule.
I second it.
Discussion,
Well, after reading their commentary today, I'm on for it.
when you say this is part of the discussion, when you say 0.25%, is that really 0.25 or are we talking about 25%?
It is 25%,
Okay,
one being whole.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, all in favor?
Okay. I would last like to move the sheriff present from step 7 to step 9 on the schedule.
I second it.
Conversation. All in favor?
I,
Right?
And that's it?
No, sorry, there is one position.
Treasurer.
Mhm.
So the treasurer does not have any stipends. And so in order to align with what I think we just did, I think we should move to keep the county treasurer at its current rate on the schedule. Obviously, still will receive their cost of living increase for this year. So we're also only paying 10% of that salary at $10,614.
So, I think, yeah, so if you grossed that up to a full-time salary,
Mhm.
10 times that,
Yep.
would they be what,
Step 7,
that would be step 7?
correct,
So will they be the only elected official below step 8?
yes.
And that's an interesting one because yeah, I believe the elected treasurer even said, I don't even need a salary kind of thing, but part of the argument was, that's you. And, and you're an elected official and you do that. But, so I get that the person is very generous that way. But is there not an argument to be setting this person with the other elected officials at step 8?
What would step 8 cost? I mean, if we raise.
It's an increase of $2,662.
Gross,
Well,
10% of that.
10% of that, so $266 annually.
First, just for simplicity's sake,
Well, where does the other 90% come from for
it
this employee?
doesn't.
They only spend 10% of their time in this role.
Yep.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
It's very inexpensive, but simplifies that a bit.
Okay,
We bring a proposal.
But you have a motion on the table, so you have to amend it if you're gonna change it.
Oh, do we still need to vote on the previous?
No, only if you're, yeah,
It was a
that
second.
motion's on the table, but
Yeah.
if you're gonna amend it, you need to amend it.
I would like to amend my previous motion to move the county treasurer to a step 8 on the schedule to align with the other elected officials. Closer alignment to the other elected officials.
So do you amend your second, or do you accept that amendment?
Well, there, you get a second.
I second it.
Any other discussion or clarification?
We're gonna spend time next week on where that $200 is going from.
Exactly. All in favor?
I'd like to know how long it's gonna take. Oh, I'm sorry,
Thank you.
Can staff ask a quick question for just clarification on the district attorney specifically?
Certainly.
Just to make sure we capture that correctly, so.
Okay.
I think what I understand is that we're moving the district attorney up to step 10. And at we will pay, the difference between what the state pays and whatever that step 10 salary is. Is that?
We're increasing them to step 10 so that the 25% that we pay aligns with the replacement of their stipend.
We're gonna pay 25% of the step 10 to the district attorney.
25%.
So we're presuming that step 10 would,
So that was just how we stay aligned with the step schedule.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
so then next year, we could start out by just saying they're all at this level, step 8, except for the sheriff
And district attorney.
and district attorney.
And we don't have to look obviously at making it for a stipend. Sure, we've eliminated that from future issues.
Yeah.
How often, do you intend to have a comp study updated or?
Well, it's not a lot of fun. So, hopefully not frequently. We did implement last year a compensation review committee, an internal compensation review committee. That is intended to make sure that any adjustments that are made are equitable in nature and that we don't end up with some one-offs. That from my perspective kind of drove this most recent compensation study. So I'm hoping through that internal compensation review committee, we can keep our salary schedule more in line, more equitable, and hopefully not have to do it as frequently. It's not on the.
I'm glad to hear that because there are other variables out there. you know, like with, kind of our thinking from last year being somewhere between Jefferson and Deschutes and all of that, and now if Deschutes, I think they're talking about 20%, that's.
Yeah, but they're increasing from 3 to 5 commissioners, so the net
Exactly.
cost
Yeah,
plus the administrative staff increase, so.
So,
And
yeah,
that
those
cost
variables,
is
we
gonna go up a
don't,
bunch.
my point is, I don't wanna have to worry about them
Yeah.
anymore, we're pretty stable. for a
well, and
while.
the cost of doing those comp studies aren't cheap. And time consuming.
Any other business that we need
You don't
to?
have to just say
Save those
surveys.
things.
I don't believe we do anything with
Okay,
the surveyor.
I don't remember, but I know the surveyors elected, so
Surveyors are likely, but I believe we pay.
pay rent. That's kind of like, yeah. Remember.
Any other business that we need to discuss?
No, I really appreciate everybody's efforts and I'm going through everything, Scott, sorry again about it. I thought I copied your email address, but I.
So close.
Do you have this draft?
I'm wondering who Scott Tibbs is and what, if you actually spent time on that.
Why am I receiving this compensation information?
And I appreciate everybody's efforts and work into getting this done. I know there's a lot of work behind the scenes that nobody sees, and I appreciate all that. Appreciate you and everybody around this table. There's a lot of time spent.
Good committee this year, lots of discussion, you guys put a lot of effort into it, so we all appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a deep dive into the whole
It
thing.
was,
Yeah.
yes, it was.
Well, salary is important.
It is.
It's very important to people
Mhm.
and, you know, a lot of years in working in corporate and having a lot of employees, there's a lot of compassion around people's pay and working for a big corporation, it was really, really challenging to keep your people happy when you didn't have the control. And I see the value in taking care of the people that take care of you.
Do you know the number one thing that staff wants is appreciation? It's not the salary. Salary is part of the package, but it's the appreciation that they get from, is the number one factor in retaining is appreciation and acknowledgement. You guys are doing a good job. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Okay, then we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Right?
I'll forward that to you.
See you.